Hey everyone, my name is Memo. This is my channel, Houseplanty Goodness, which essentially is a place that I come to geek out about my big passion, which is tropical houseplants. If you like videos like this, please if you like this video specifically, do drop a comment or a like down below. It lets me know that this is content that you enjoy consuming and I can actually create more videos like this. If you like content of this type generally, do consider subscribing down below. Every week I'll try to upload 2 or 3 times, so there's going to be a lot of content that's coming on like this where I'll talk a bit more about my plants. I'm in my conservatory now, otherwise dubbed as the hothouse. And yeah, let's dive into today's topic, which is the point that I want to talk about today is chimeric variegation. So I don't know if anybody's ever heard of this before, but chimeric variegation is the variegation that you get in a lot of the house plants that we would have in our care, essentially. So for instance, let's actually delve into, before I go into anything else really, let's dive into what a chimera is. So I don't know if anybody's kind of brushed up on their mythology, but I can give you a bit of an explanation. A chimera was a mythological beast which had different parts from different animals. I think it had the body of a lion, it had the tail of a scorpion, it had wings of an eagle, I think. So a chimera essentially is a being, or in this case I'll talk about plants that are chimeras. There's also chimerism in humans. Sometimes when you get people with 2 different coloured eyes, not always, but sometimes those humans are chimeras as well. So they've got a second set of DNA, which is what's making that colour in the eye being different. But when it comes to chimeras, a lot of the time in plants, it tends to be the variegated plants. So you can imagine where the variegation is one set of DNA and the green part is the other part of the DNA. And the point I want to talk about today is the fact that a lot of the times with chimeric variegants, the variegation, when you think it has reverted, it hasn't. And a really good example of this would be the philodendron pink princess, and I will actually show you mine in just a minute so you can kind of see what I'm talking about. But with chimeric variegation, what you can sometimes see is, obviously we all know, hopefully by this point, that when you're looking for variegation and when you think your plant has reverted, you need to look at the stem. This is highly true for things like the variegated Alba monstera, where you can see the white stripe going down. So even if the leaf that's come out is relatively green, it doesn't have a lot of variegation, if there's a strong amount of variegation in the stem that you can see, then there's still likelihood that the following leaves will have some variegation. Now, that's not always the case, and it's not always as clear. There are certain plants, and I'll grab one now actually. So for instance, I've got this variegated hibiscus, and I don't know whether or not it will come up on camera, and I'll bring it in a bit closer and hopefully you might be able to see the stems there. You can't see any variegation in the stem. The stem is just an average brown colour, so you wouldn't necessarily be able to tell whether or not there's variegation still within that plant if you're starting to see some green leaves. And it happens a lot, for instance, with the philodendron pink princess. And even though you can see the pink stripe going up the side of the stem, it's not always the case that when you stop seeing variegated leaves coming through and you stop seeing the stem have the pink stripe, that the plant has reverted. A lot of people will go in and they will just chop the plant. But that's not always the case, and I'll show you now, and that's the point I'm trying to make. With chimeric variegants, the DNA is still probably within the stem. So if you hold off for a bit, and they usually do say this a lot of the times with pink princesses, if you can hold on the kind of muddy brown leaves that you'll get until the variegation comes back in, you might still get that variegation coming through because it might be on the inside of the stem essentially. You might not be able to see that variegation in there, but it's still within the DNA of those cells because it is that variegant portion of the DNA. Now, the other thing that's interesting about variegation, specifically chimeric variegation, is especially when it comes to the pink plants like the pink princess that have got a variegated colour that isn't white or yellow, which is what we're used to seeing. So if anybody's ever seen another video, if they've got a pink princess and they cut the stem to maybe propagate, a lot of people will say that it bleeds because it's got this really deep red sap essentially. So if you'd imagine if the sap of the plant is red, and there's going to be a variegated part of the leaf which would normally be white, that variegated part would no longer be white. It would be white mixed with the red that you're seeing from the sap, thus the pink. So let me just grab you and take you in a bit closer, and you can actually see what I mean within my pink princess. So you can see here my pink princess, and you can see that it doesn't have an awful lot of variegation. It never really did, to be fair, but it did have some splashes of pink, but the more you went up on the plant, the more it grew, the more green it became. So if I just show you the top part of the plant now, you might be able to see in that top part of the plant that most of the leaves were green and it looked like it had fully reverted, but it started showing in some variegations. Annoyingly, my first half moon, even though it was a tiny leaf in terms of variegation, happened whilst the move was happening, so it got a bit battered, and you can see the new leaf doesn't look like it's got too much variegation. But my point I was trying to make is, normally somebody else would have probably cut off the plant at that point, tried to propagate it, take it down to the last variegated part, but you can see it then brought up some more variegation. So try to hold off if you can, because the variegation could come back. Excellent, so you were able to see what I meant by the variegation, and that is something to just be aware of, that you should kind of potentially sometimes with your plants leave them for a bit before you decide to chop back entirely. And also the other thing, we've said this on previous videos, the more green that exists on the plant itself, the more chance it has to photosynthesize and grow stronger and faster. So occasionally leaving the odd fully green leaf or non-variegated leaf on there, it's not a problem. It's more of an aesthetic issue for you if you don't want to have that on there, but obviously at that point you're making that conscious decision that you essentially are maybe holding back the plant potentially by taking away those fully green leaves that could potentially photosynthesize a bit better and actually still give it a boost and potentially still get the variegation coming back like I just showed you on the video. But yeah, that's all I think I wanted to say about the chimeric variegations. If you want to know a bit more, if you want to have a discussion about this, please do drop a comment down below in the comments. I'd love to have that conversation with you. We're building a nice little community here where people are kind of interacting, they're asking questions, so other people that are chipping in as well, which is great to see actually. So yeah, I think that will be all for today, potentially. I hope you've enjoyed. I hope I will see you back here soon. And yeah, have a great rest of the day. Thanks. Bye.